Today, I want to talk about the G.I.Joe Fallacy. What is the G.I.Joe Fallacy? Well, it was a cartoon that started in 1965, and it ended about 1985. And in every show in this cartoon, there would be a lesson. And at the end, all the kids would say, well, now I know. And G.I. Joe would look at all the kids and say, and knowing is half the battle. And I want to talk about this today because I've noticed that this type of sentiment is, it's very big in psychology now. I hear it a lot. And it was, again, repopularized, I think, by Maya Angelou, who said, if you know better, you do better. And of course, this was echoed by Oprah, and she's got a ton of fans. And also, Dr. Phil used to say it a lot. Again, if you know better, you do better. However, there has never been any data or any evidence to show or to prove or to indicate that that's true. As a matter of fact, it's blatantly false, and actually the opposite is true. Now, interestingly enough, my parents, who are not psychologists, they would always say the words easier said than done, and action is the only thing that matters. And I'll give you an example of that. So for some reason, I had it on my mind that I wanted to do this 26.2 mile marathon race. And again, I was 13 years old, so I didn't know how to do this. So I went to the library, I picked up a magazine, Runner's World, and in it, it had a protocol to be able to finish a race of this length. And you had to run between 40 to 50 miles a week for about 16 weeks in a row. And I thought, well, that's easy, simple math, I can do this. So I came home and I was really excited. I told my mother. She wasn't that excited about it. The first thing she said, well, it was easier said than done. You better get outside and do some running. And so I did, and I ended up doing the marathon race. Now, does knowing better make you do better? Most of the time, no. You have to be able to apply the knowledge that you know. Unfortunately, most people don't. I'll give you some examples of that. We all know that we should eat nutritious food. I don't have to tell you that carrots are better than carrot cake. I don't have to tell you that apples are better than apple pie. We know these things. However, 66% of Americans are overweight. 33% of Americans are obese. So do we follow what we know? Obviously not. Physical activity. We all know it's important. We all want to look good. We want to look good in our clothes. We want to look good out of our clothes. We want to be healthy. We want to live longer. We understand all this. Yet, less than 5% of Americans actually do 30 minutes of physical activity 5 days a week. That's not asking a lot, but yet very few Americans actually do the work. We all know sleep is important to our well-being. It also helps us to be better to the people around us. We're not so irritable. Do we get enough sleep? Only about 40% of Americans actually get the required 7 to 8 hours of sleep. And somebody could say, yeah, but hold on, I'm busy. Yeah, not true, because the evidence would also tell us that we spend a lot of time on Facebook. We spend a lot of time doing things that just get in our way, and we don't really know how to prioritize. We spend a lot of time watching late night shows and doing a lot of things instead of doing important things like worrying about our health, such as sleep. We all know about the dangers of alcohol and drugs. And yet, 13% of Americans would meet the criteria for being alcohol dependent, or in layman terms, they're alcoholics, which means more than 1 out of 10 Americans are alcoholics. That's pretty sad. When we talk about drugs, there's an opioid epidemic, and that kills about 67,000 people per year. Let's add that to alcohol-related deaths, which equal about another 88,000 deaths per year, including cirrhosis of the liver and car accidents. Now, if we were being totally upfront and honest, there's an epidemic of every drug in the United States. All these drugs are being abused at an incredibly high record rate. We know better. We don't do better. More examples. Let's talk about birth control. We all know that birth control works. Somewhere between 98, maybe 95% of the time. And yet, there's a group of people, very vocal in America, that don't even want you to have that information to be able to make the correct decisions. So in that sense, they don't even want you to know better. But most people actually do. But even so, it's estimated that about 50% of pregnancies in America are unintended. How is that even possible? We know how to create babies and we know how to prevent that. And yet 50% are unintended. Yes, we know better. We don't do better. So let's bring it up to the current time, like right up to today. I think today's what, July 1st. The CDC, epidemiologists, and infectious disease experts all agree on a few things. I'll give you one. They all agree that wearing a mask helps prevent the spread of coronavirus. We know this. The evidence points to it. The experts say it. And yet, only about 45% of Americans are willing to wear a mask, even if they put their life in danger or other people's lives in danger. Again, we know better. Do we do better? Absolutely not. So how can we use the information we have to actually do better? Let's go over a few. So number one, we have to make decisions based on the long-term results and not think about instant gratification. So if we think about food again, sure, everybody wants to eat candy or cake. It's sugar, it tastes sweet, I get it. But in the long run, it's not healthy at all. There's no nutritional value and you're gonna gain weight. So yes, it tastes good in the short term, but in the long term, it's detrimental to you. So the better choice is to eat good food. The other thing we have to do is to make things as easy as possible. So keeping in line with talking about food, let's say I had a thing for chocolate chip cookies tonight. One thing that you should do to create the separation is to, number one, don't have it in the house. Because what I would have to do is I would have to get dressed, I'd have to go outside, go in my car, fight traffic, go find the cookies at the store, wait in line with a bunch of overweight people, and that would already make me feel guilty. And then I'd have to sit there and finally get my cookies and then go back to my car, fight traffic. By the time I came home, I wouldn't do this. It would just be a total waste of time, and I'd be embarrassed to even say I went through so much time and attention to get a cookie. Forget it, I'm not doing it. So, keep the junk food away. If you really don't want to eat junk food, then don't keep it in the house, all right? So, like even on your kitchen counters, instead of putting jelly beans or chocolate kisses or whatever, put a bowl of fruit. You're hungry, grab an apple. That's simple. Let me give you a study that was done in 1965 at Yale University. There was a class where the lecturer spoke about the importance of getting a tetanus shot. And at the end of the class, about 100% of the students said it's important, we're going to get tetanus shots. Come to find out that only 3% of them did. Interesting, right? So another class and another lecture. Same lecture. Everybody decided that getting a tetanus shot was important. And again, almost everybody in the class said that they were going to get a tetanus shot. But this time, the teacher gave them the places and the doctors and nurses that they could go to and the facilities that they could go to in order to get the tetanus shot. And then they were prompted to make an appointment. Then 27% of the people this time, which is 9 times higher, actually got the shots. Now, again, it's a 900% increase just by making it easier for them and prompting them. That's the good part. The bad part is that they all agreed that getting a tetanus shot in 1965 was really, really important, and still only a quarter of them did. And let's assume that they were really smart because they were from Yale. And even then, it's hard to get people to do the right thing even when they have the right information. So number 3, on how to take good information and actually apply it. I think what you have to really do is to make a very specific goal with a very specific strategy. It's not enough to say, I'd like to look good in my clothes in the next few months, or I'd like to lose some weight. That's not good enough. A better way to do it would be to say, I would like to lose, and I will lose 20 pounds, and I will do this in 3 months. And I will do this by having a 1,300 calorie a day diet, starting today, not tomorrow, today. And I will also augment that with cardiovascular activity, and I will do that on the treadmill, and I will do that 4 to 5 times a week for 45 minutes at a 3.3 miles per hour pace. Now, you may not have to get that specific, but it helps to be very specific. It's not good enough to say you're going to do something at some time and you're going to do it in some way when you get around to it. You'll never get around to it. And number 4, which I think is probably the most important, you really have to start making a decision on who do you want to be as a person. Do you want to be a responsible human being? Do you want to be a person that people can count on you? Do you want to be able to hold yourself accountable for your actions? Because people who know better and they don't do better, there's an incongruence, and it's really hard to have good self-worth that way. It's really hard to increase your self-esteem when you know you're not doing the things that you really know are good for you. And from there, really think about what your priorities are. Your priorities, not mine, not the guy down the street, not the CDC, not somebody from a gym who says you need to do 30 minutes of cardio 4 times a week. Maybe that's too much for you. Maybe once a week. I've said that to all my clients that are total beginners. They come to me and they go, oh, I had this trainer and I'm not sure about him. And I'm like, well, what are you afraid of? And they said, well, they want to take my money up front. And they want me to train 5 days a week. I'm like, well, how many days a week do you train right now? And they'll say, well, I don't train any days a week. And I said, well, when was the last time you did something? Like, well, I stretched a little bit and I did a little bit of work when I used to be a cheerleader when I was in high school, but that was 25 years ago. I'm like, okay. So how about the 0 that you're doing? We just do one change. Change one food. Change one bit of activity. Come in on a Monday. That's it. Don't worry about doing it every day. Once. So that would be your specific goal. That's your little change. I played a little bit of a guitar before we started. Let me tell you something about guitar. Number 1, I suck. That's number 1. I'm not good at it. But I can tell you this. The difference between playing a major chord and a minor chord is like this distance on a fretboard. And yet it makes a sound of happiness in the major and sadness or blues in the minor. It's the slightest of slightest differences, but it makes a massive difference to the ear. And it's the same thing of what I'm talking about here. So I don't want to go on too long, but again, this is about the G.I.Joe Fallacy. It doesn't mean if you know better, it doesn't have anything to do with you doing better. You have to set your priorities, make your goals, and you have to apply the knowledge that you have or that's given to you, or if you don't have that knowledge, seek it. Thanks for listening. I am Joe Peroni, and if you like the show, please subscribe, and even better, tell a few friends for me. Thank you.